If you don't have a washing machine on board, you can still get clean clothes between laundromats. Hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll tell you about a nifty little tool that makes laundry day on the boat so much easier. Now, admittedly, this is going to be a quick little podcast today, but it is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Saving to Sail. Whether you want to start a blog or an online business, get paid to write, or get a remote job, Saving to Sail gives you the knowledge, tools, and inspiration to make money while cruising. Visit savingtosail.com. That's savingtosail.com/boatgalley for exclusive bonuses and use code BG20 for 20% off all Saving to Sail e-courses. Saving to Sail, helping you work online so you can leave the dock sooner and sail the world longer. When cruising, there often isn't a nearby laundromat, but there is a pile of dirty laundry. Some boats, the really lucky ones, have a washing machine, a large capacity water maker, and the power to support them. Others, like ours, don't. So we hand wash. Now, on our first boat, Ketal, I used a 5-gallon bucket and initially did it all by hand as if I was washing delicates. I'd wash each item separately and carefully swish them around. Yeah, that lasted exactly one laundry day. Talking to other cruisers, I learned to use a new, and used only for laundry, toilet plunger as an agitator. Infinitely less work, and the clothes got cleaner too. But the length of the handle on the toilet plunger meant that I was still hunched over the bucket, and it slopped water over the edge. Well, right before our first trip to the Bahamas, I was going to buy a new toilet plunger to do laundry with, as I knew that laundromats could be a distance apart there. Somehow, though, I managed to spot an ad for the washing wand, supposedly a marked improvement on washing with a plunger. It intrigued me, and I bought it. And it has truly been one of my favorite purchases. You see, it's designed to push water through a bucket of clothes, with water channels that let water go through the device, so that water doesn't slop out of the bucket nearly as much. There's a shovel-type handle that makes it much easier to agitate. It's just an easier, more ergonomic movement. And the larger diameter means more effective agitation in a 5-gallon bucket. And more than once, I had pulled the wooden handle out of the rubber plunger when using a toilet plunger. And when it happens once, it'll keep happening more and more frequently as the rubber stretches. The washing wand is all hard plastic, with the plunger molded to the handle, and the handle pieces screwing together. And yes, it's in 4 pieces, which makes it much easier to store, and they screw together tightly. It's all plastic, which on one hand is not great environmentally, but this is a multiple-use item. You're going to be using it for years. And the fact that there is no metal to rust or wood to blacken, to me makes it seem that plastic really is the material of choice here. And it has been really sturdy. I have been using this now for 4 years. It looks brand new. There's no problem to it at all. Now, you can buy these on Amazon. There's a link in the show notes. I saw something similar locally in a store after I'd gotten the washing wand, but the locally available one seemed much flimsier and the plastic much more brittle. So if you're looking at one in a local store, look carefully at the quality and how long you think that it might last. If you see the instructions on one of these, it's going to say that you need 2 5-gallon buckets. And seriously, you only need one. Basically, how I use it. First of all, let's be real. No method of hand washing is going to get clothes as clean as a washing machine does. My goal is to remove the worst of the dirt, the stink, the mildew, and make the clothes fit to wear again. If you really want to remove stains and are willing to spend the time, a portable washboard is a good extra piece of equipment. Use a little bar soap or a stain stick, scrub on the washboard, and then wash as usual in the 5-gallon bucket with a washing wand. I usually don't go through this extra step on our work or sailing clothes, but a couple of people that I know do use a washboard, and there is a link to one of them in the show notes. Now, keeping the laundry pile from getting too big not only helps the boat smell fresh, it helps reduce the mold and mildew in the boat in general. Clothes that are wet with sweat just never dry out due to the salt. And then when you combine that with salt air, things never dry. They just get moldy or mildewy. I'm washing sweaty or boat project filthy t-shirts, shorts, undies, rags, and our pillowcases. Towels, the sheets, the rugs, the blankets, I leave for times when I do find a laundromat. So here's how I do it. I try to do laundry every few days so there's not too much to do. This cuts down on the amount of water that I need at one time, and it makes it easier to wash items and allows for enough drying space. Late one day, I'll put about a tablespoon of concentrated biodegradable laundry soap in a 5-gallon bucket and add a gallon or so of fresh water. Then I add clothes and more water to cover the clothes if that's necessary. At this point, it's okay if the clothes are crammed in. Agitate with the washing wand a bit, and then let it all sit overnight, agitating about 20 strokes periodically. I just leave the bucket and the wand in the cockpit, so it tends to be whenever I walk by, I just do a little. The next morning, I take about half the clothes out, wringing them as I do to keep as much water in the bucket as possible. All I'm trying to do here is make more room in the bucket. In other words, the clothes that I'm taking out aren't done yet. The clothes need space for the water to move through them as I'm agitating. Then I use the washing wand and agitate 100 or so strokes. I take these clothes out, wringing them as I do, trying to get as much soapy water out as possible so it doesn't go into the rinse water. I put the other clothes back in the bucket and I do the same thing. All the clothes are now washed, and I dump the wash water. I fill the bucket about 4 inches deep with fresh water, and I add 1 or 2 pieces of clothing at a time, and I agitate 20 or 30 times to rinse. Then I remove the items and wring well. Dave does another wring after mine and always gets more water out, and then he hangs the items to dry. We repeat until everything is rinsed and hung to dry. If the rinse water gets dirty, I'll discard it and add fresh. Let me give you a couple of tips. A big key is not to use too much soap. If you do, it'll take a lot of fresh water to rinse it out. Don't use salt water, even for washing. You'll use more fresh water to get all the salt out than it would have taken you to wash the clothes in fresh. And if you don't get all the salt out, your clothes will never completely dry, and they will mildew instead. If you have a little white vinegar to spare, adding a 1/4 cup to the rinse water will help cut the soap, but you won't smell it on your clothes once they dry. And if I think about it, putting the soak or wash water into the bucket earlier in the day and letting it sit in the sun gives me warm water to do laundry with. Now, once upon a time, I used ammonia in the wash water instead of laundry soap. It used less water as you don't have to rinse ammonia out. I no longer recommend this, and if you hear it from someone else, think seriously about not doing it. There's 2 reasons. First of all, it is very hard on clothing. And second, there is controversy over whether putting ammonia into seawater is harmful to fish, specifically to their gills. I'd rather err on the side of caution. I kind of like seeing all those pretty fish or having them for dinner. A number of people have asked me about the Wonder Wash. Basically, it's a hand crank washer. I've seen a few posts from cruisers on various forums saying that they love theirs, and I've seen others saying that they didn't find it that helpful for the amount of space that it took up. I've never used one. We just don't have the space. It certainly does look interesting, but I would say to only get it if you have enough space. That's it for this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast. I hope you found it interesting. And if so, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe. Until next time.